What's going on, everyone? It's your boy Luke here for a different live stream. Usually we only have our weekly DFS live stream, but I finally caved in. I've been asked about this a million times at this point to do a live betting show to go over my thought process for putting together a betting card. And that is exactly what we're going to do in this video. We'll go through some outright bets, I guess a few first round leaders as we're going through the outright board. And at the end, we'll talk about a few matchups that I'll have my eyes on. So let's go ahead and hop right on into it. It should be a little bit of a quieter stream just because it's last second. I wasn't advertising it very much. So if you are in the live chat, you do have any questions, you're going to have more than enough opportunity to get those in. So feel free to go ahead and put anyone down in the chat that you'd like me to do a deep dive on. Let me make sure that the board looks okay on here. Looks like it's all set to go. And this is the outright board. So if you guys haven't seen Odds Checker before, it's by far the best resource to use to find these outright betting lines because it updates just about every 5 minutes. And of course, you can check the lines from across the industry. You have most of the large books on there, DraftKings, FanDuel, BetMGM, Caesars, all of the big sports books, a lot of the international sports books as well, like Bet365, Unibet, all of those sort of fun stuff. So no matter where you're at, you should be able to access one of these books. So let's go ahead and hop right on into it. And we'll start at the top of the board where there's not really a ton of lines that I like going to. I mean, guys like Rory McIlroy could very realistically win this event. Even guys like a Gary Woodland, I have my eyes on for potentially winning, but the lines just aren't there, right? 7.5 to 1 for Rory McIlroy to win over there at DK. 9 to 1 is the best number you're going to get on him, and that's at PointsBet. So in general, Rory McIlroy is, of course, one of the best players in the entire world, but not at 9 to 1, not even at 7.5 to 1, especially. If he was closer to 12 or 13 to 1, you might have me a little bit intrigued, but the sports books are definitely pricing him out of the equation. Of course, in DFS, we don't have to worry about that. Jordan Spieth, of course, coming in as a last year's champion, 16 to 1 isn't even enough on him. I mean, he has a realistic chance of going back to back here, particularly with, I don't want to say a weak field, but a weaker than average field for the PGA Tour. But at the same time, he should be closer to 20 to 1 to win, right? Especially with the recent form. He's looked absolutely dreadful out there. So no one up top that I really have my eyes on. I'm fading Corey Connors this week. I'm very hesitant about Hideki Matsuyama, given the injury, a lot of the unknowns behind Hideki's health. Abraham Ancer, also not the best course fit for me this week. He's also a little bit overrated. I mean, just think about a month ago. The guy was like $7,800. He was like 7% owned because he was in a horrible stretch of golf. He's gotten a little bit out of that, right? He started to look a little bit sharper over the last 3 or 4 events, but 22 to 1 on him still isn't enough for me. He started a little bit lower. He's actually been steamed up by a lot of these betting companies over the last week or so. That's why in the DraftKings pricing, somebody like Corey Connors now is at 20 to 1, whereas Abraham Ancer is 22 to 1. People were very keen to jump on Corey Connors this week. It's also why he's going to be extremely popular in DFS. But pretty much no matter who it is up top, I don't really have my eyes on anyone. I just think a lot of the lines are steamed a little bit lower than they should be given the strength of the field. Oh, my contact's giving me some issues here. 1 second. But in general, where I start to get a little bit interesting is when we get out of the 20s, right? When we start to get into the 30s, there's a few guys that I think are similar plays to some of those guys that we have up there towards the top. And you're starting to get a fair number on them. And really, the number one guy that starts to stand out is Maverick Mcnealy. He's the one guy I actually have a bet on at this point of the week. He's 35 to 1. Of course, he's underrated, in my opinion, just based on the shots gain metrics. He's a top 10 player in this field. He's being priced like he's in the top 25, which isn't necessarily disrespectful. If he was at 50 to 1, I'd probably have a much larger play on like somebody like a Maverick McNealy, but I think that's fair at 35 to 1. I like him in DFS. Gary Woodland at 30 to 1's another guy I had my eye on. Not somebody that I fired an outright bet on yet, but at 30 to 1, I think it makes a lot of sense. You can get that at DraftKings too. They're one of the best lines that they have out there. Bryson at 28 to 1. I mean, if you're a believer in his health, that's, of course, a disrespectful line. Not necessarily sure I'm going to fire that outright bet. I think he's a little bit more interesting in the fantasy format where we're getting credit for all those birdies that he makes. I mean, the outright market, he's got to finish first place, and he's still likely to be a little bit shaky, a little bit rusty out there, right? He didn't look the sharpest around the green. So, yeah, I might want to wait on him on the outright market, but DFS, you can get away with him making a few bogeys here and there. Moving on a little bit further, I mean, Jason Day is always interesting when you get a 5 next to his name, particularly in a weaker field. Tony Finau, 40 to 1, somebody I already have an outright bet on. The best number you can get is at DraftKings. So also a relatively accessible book right there. But Jason Day is a guy I really want to focus on here because, just 3 or 4 weeks ago, everyone was talking about the guy. He was the DFS darling, somebody who started to look like his old self. And of course, he had a few down events, and now everybody's kicking him to the curb again. Nobody wants to play Jason Day. Everything that thinks that he's just broken very well could have just had a stiff back, right? That's what happens with these older players, particularly guys like Day that have dealt with so many injuries over the years, so many surgeries. He could come out this time, be extremely loose, right? He might be stiff for the Masters next week after having a really solid week this week and completely shit the bed. Just understand what you're getting with Jason Day. He's either going to look extremely sharp and you're going to be kicking yourself because you didn't play him, or he's going to look like crap and you're really happy you faded him. There's pretty much no in between for Jason Day. But in the outright betting market, that's intriguing, right? He's 50-1. That means that he's got to win 2 out of 100 events for him to be paying off in the long term. And more than often than not, I can tell you, if he played 100 events in this type of field at a golf course that fits his game this well, he's going to win more than 2 out of 100 times. So I do like him at 50-1 there. Somebody that I do think has a realistic shot to win. It's going to come down to the health. And we have no way of telling if he's going to have that health this week. But we'll just have to see, right? It's like I said, it's a crapshoot. And if you bet on him every single week, you're going to get burned a lot more than not. But in the long term, he is going to pay that off. You just have to be willing to keep backing him, understand that you're going to have those crap performances, and don't jump off the train before he ends up hitting, because that's one of the most disappointing things that can happen in outright betting. Cash Me If You Can says, I dropped a bomb on McNealy. Absolutely love it. And Gsluke. So yeah, we'll have to check out his number here in a second. He might be interesting. It depends where his number's at right now. I'm doing this live with you guys, right? There's only 3 or 4 bets that I actually already have placed. And there's very well some bets that I'm going to find while we go through here that I like. And Cash Me If You Can says, Day's downfall happened when he married a woman from Ohio. Yeah, now he lives in Columbus or whatever, which is one of the most dreadful places to live. I lived in Pittsburgh, so I went to Columbus for various golf outings, a few club football matches, that kind of thing in college. And yeah, it's fun to drink in, right? If you're a college student, great city to be in, but not for a married man at his age, right? It's just move down to Florida, do what everyone else does. But I digress. Let's move a little bit further down the board. Mito Pereira at 60-1 always catches my eye. I just think that's a fair line on him, right? If he was 75-1, I'd be telling everyone to be placing a bet on Mito Pereira. I just think it's fair right there. He's one of my sweethearts, so might end up getting a bet for me come lock tomorrow. Ricky Feller at 66-1 is a sucker's bet. Do not do it. The guy's not going to win anytime soon. He's at least going to show some form before he wins, right? So, he's shown flashes of it from time to time, but wait until he strings together 2 or 3 events, 2 or 3 top 25 finishes, that type of thing, before you hop on that bandwagon. If you're going to hop on anybody without any semblance of form, Charlie Hoffman can make a lot of sense. Gsluke is at that same number. Of course, he's coming in with better form. Not the best course history for a Gsluke, but Charlie Hoffman, right? I mean, if you're talking about course history, he's going to be your guy. So he finished second place last year. He has a couple other second place finishes, a win at this event, multiple other top 10 finishes. I mean, they might as well call this the Charlie Hoffman Open. I know plenty of people out there in the industry refer to it as that. So at 75-1, you can always convince me to hop on that type of number. And with Hoffman, a guy that's that old, right? This isn't somebody who's an unproven prospect. We know who Charlie Hoffman is. This is somebody who we know is relatively decent off the tee, right? He's usually going to gain right around a quarter of a stroke per round. When he's his best self, he's going to be one of the better approach players in the field. And he's going to be a little bit shaky with that around the green play and the putting. So as much as, he's struggled of late, he's going to figure it out at some point. It's Charlie Hoffman. The guy's nearly 40 years old. Maybe he's over 40 years old at this point. I don't know that off the top of my head, but either way, he's been around absolutely forever. He'll figure it out at some point. Brendan Steele's interesting. He has really good course history here. He tends to gain a lot more strokes putting here than he does at other golf courses, relatively straight off the tee. So even though he's not long, at least he's going to be hitting these fairways, getting that extra rollout. The approach play has been unbelievable over the last 3 or 4 events. And he's 80-1 at DK Sportsbook, right? So at the most accessible sportsbook, he's 80-1. Look at the numbers of these other sportsbooks. 60-1 across the board. 70-1's the next highest number you're going to find, 50-1 over there at FanDuel, right? So that should be very telling, right? FanDuel has them at 30 places lower than what they have them at DK. So this is probably the last time you're going to be able to hit this bet. I would assume this number gets steamed down in the next 15 to 20 minutes. I already have a bet on Brendan Steele. I have $20 on him at 80-1. So if he ends up winning, that'd be pretty sick, but we'll end up having to see there. That's a fifth of a unit bet for me. Usually a unit is a $100 bill. For my bankroll, especially for guys up top, right? Usually I'm using one unit on somebody like a Rory McIlroy. If I was going to bet somebody at 9 or 10 to 1, it'd be $100, right? You got to make it worth it. You can't be putting $5 on somebody at 9 to 1. That's cool. You won $45. You won a Xbox game. Nothing. I don't want to shame anyone out there. Right? If that's what you do with your bankroll, that's fine. But to me, I want to have at least a little bit of skin in the game, right? You want to actually win something when you go out there and win. Ian Poulter there at 90 to 1. Not going to get any of my money. I've seen a lot of people throwing his name around just because of the course history. He hasn't shown any type of form. Lanto Griffin's a little bit more intriguing at that number 90. Can always get my money there. Look at this number with Robert McIntyre. So he's 90 to 1. I believe that's points bet. Yeah, so that's points bet over here. Robert McIntyre. He's 40 to 1 at DK. He's 65 to 1 at FanDuel. Around 60 to 71 across the board, and then 90 to 1 over there at points bet. Obviously, a much higher pedigree player than a lot of these, at least points bet is giving him credit for. I mean, look at this. 40 to 1 at FanDuel. Other guys at 40 to 1, just to give you guys a little bit of let's say, perspective here, right? Tony Finau, Jason Day, Keegan Bradley, Adam Hadwin, guys that are in incredible form and frankly pretty solid players. And then you have somebody down here like Robert McIntyre. Just to me, it's pretty ridiculous that he's completely mispriced by PointsBet there. I don't have access to PointsBet because I'm down here in Florida, but if you do, I would recommend taking a look at that one. Moving down a little bit further, I mean, there's a lot of guys here that are unproven prospects. Rasmus Hogart has been a winner on the European Tour. He's 100 to 1. Maybe sprinkle a few dollars on that, but a very volatile player, probably not going to come through. Takumi Kanaya looked pretty solid last week, but even at 125 to 1, I don't think he's going to come through and win. Matt Jones at 130 is a number I love. That's at DK Sportsbook, so might want to go ahead and check that one out. He's a proven winner. He won over there at the Houston Open, which is another Texas golf course. He's been pretty decent at this golf course as well over the years, has a top 10 finish, looked really good at the Tournament of Champions, looked pretty decent over there at YLI. Kind of fell off the board a little bit afterwards, just made a few cuts, hasn't really done anything flashy. But Matt Jones is long off the tee, so he's got that in his record for this week at the Valero. He's good around the green, pretty solid putter on POA and NUA, so I like him at 130 to 1. Honestly, if I were to have made the lines for this, he'd be closer to 90, maybe 100 to 1 to win. So I definitely think that you're getting quite a bit of value there. Let's go ahead and catch up on chat. Mr. Awaken says, when Kazire wins, they'll change his picture with the stash. That would be hilarious. I do like Kazire this week, though. Of course, Texas guy always has some success over here. What is his betting number? So you reminded me, he's a core pick for me this week. Let's see, he's 66 to 1, so that's comparable with like the Charlie Hoffman range. Yeah, you could convince me to put an outright on Kazire, right? He's not somebody who immediately stuck out to me. The number, what is this? It's at BetMGM. You can get 66 to 1. I like that a whole lot more than the 50 or the 55 to 1 that you're getting at, of course, FanDuel and DraftKings, the two biggest sports books. But if you can get that 66 to 1 number, yeah, man, I agree with you. I think that's a sharp play there. And of course, in DFS, I mean, he doesn't have to win, right? So that's why he's one of our core picks this week. Steele is long off the tee, brother. He's ranked 25th in distance. See, that surprises me. I think that in usually top 15 every year, just no one pays attention to him. I think a lot of that is because of the rollout that he gets. Like if you watch him actually hit the ball, he's only carrying it like 295, 300. So it must be the rollout that he's getting. I mean, just look at his swing. The guy isn't swinging that hard, but yeah, I mean, that sneaky long. I mean, that's a good thing as well, right? You'll take that, the Valero. He's extremely accurate. I mean, we know that with Brendan Steele. He can get a little bit hairy at times. I know times last year when he really missed cuts, it was because the driving accuracy wasn't there. That's usually something that he can tune into. So yeah, I guess he's sneaky long, and maybe I need to give him a little bit more credit because, yeah, you're right. I did see that at one point that he was up there in the driving distance, and I was a little bit surprised by it. Chandler says, I got the Patreon to work. Sounds good to take you to Discord, but it doesn't do anything. Just message me. Yeah, it expires. So the link that's up there was posted a few weeks ago. Just message me on Instagram, and it's much more accessible. I'll be able to answer you on there immediately and be able to get you going there. Just catch me if you can. Says, finally, based on the wind forecast, looks like the afternoon morning flights will work. Yeah, I'm going to have to check a little bit later on the wind forecast. It changes so much for Texas that I want to wait to as late as possible. But you're saying that the afternoon morning will work. So you're saying that it's probably going to be a little bit windier, I guess, tomorrow afternoon, at least a little bit calmer. Sorry, not tomorrow, Friday afternoon, at least a little bit calmer tomorrow afternoon. Hopefully that's the case, right? Because then we can play some 4-2 lineups, some 5-1 lineups. Worked for us at the Players Championship. We went away from we zigged while everyone is zagged at the Players Championship. It ended up working out. So maybe we'll be able to do the same thing this week. We'll have to check out. Let's go ahead and move a little bit a little bit further down the board. Sorry, a little bit of a word salad there. So we have Chad Raymie at 140 to 1. He's coming off the win. A lot of people are going to bet that, but he's not a proven winner. Even on the Korn Ferry Tour, he was more of a top 25 machine than he was a winner. So good for him last week. I had him in my DFS lineups at Corrales, but not somebody that I'm going to get an investment for this type of field. We're starting to get towards long shot range. A few guys that stick out. Brandon Grace at 150 to 1. I like him in DFS. He's at least won events before. Really good in the Texas wind, accurate off the tee, relatively good putter, really solid around the green, but he has his best stuff. Just the approach play is not always there for Brandon Grace. That's the X factor for him. When he finds that approach play, he's able to go out there, gain 3 or 4 strokes to the field. That's when he goes and contends. Brendan Todd's accurate off the tee, can get really hot with the putter. Maybe worth it 160. Probably not on my card, though. Wyndham Clark at 160 to 1 is interesting because of his combination of distance and putting ability. In terms of pure long shots, Cameron Champ, anytime you get a 2 next to his name, 200 to 1 at BetMGM. That's interesting. Of course, he's multiple-time winner on tour, and he's won without having form before. I mean, a lot of times when this guy comes through, when he won the 3M Open this year, he had missed 7 straight cuts going into that event. Had been absolute dog shit. And for whatever reason, a lot of people on Twitter had picked him to win that week, and he went out there and won. So good on him. I actually believe a few people that I know ended up hitting on him that week. But at the same time, this is somebody who does that type of thing. And he's 200 to 1 to win this type of event. I'm willing to take that type of long shot on him. He's done it before. I believe his first win on tour as well, when he won back in 2019, he was coming in with pretty shaky form as well. I don't think it was as bad as what we had when he was going into the 3M. But yeah, 200 to 1. You could definitely sign me up for a Cameron Champ there. Andrew Putnam at 210 to 1. This was somebody who was 45 to 1 about a month ago, 55 to 1 over there on the West Coast swing. This is over there at FanDuel that he's 210 to 1. There's going to be POA newest surfaces this week. If you guys have seen the course breakdown, you know what I'm talking about. So I definitely think that he's worth a few shots because he's an absolute maestro on those surfaces. Hinckley Biota finished in the top 10 here before, and that was when he was a much worse player than what he is today. He's accurate off the tee. He can get that magical putter working from time to time. Just has to find the iron play, and he's 225 to 1, right? So you're kind of asking for a lot down in this range. Doc Redman has been playing a lot better recently than what we've seen. He's 250 to 1 at DraftKings. GT Poston's not going to get an investment for me, but maybe $1 at 250 to 1. Matt Wallace is in dreadful form. He's played well at this event in the past, but not well enough to get an investment for me. He's been absolute crap of late. But Patrick Rogers at 250 to 1 at DraftKings is worth a bet. This is somebody who was in decent form just a few weeks ago. He missed a few cuts in a row. One of them was the Players' Championship. He was on the wrong side of the draw there, so we can give him at least a little bit of credit there. But Patrick Rogers, he's a volatile player. He's going to miss plenty of cuts. But there's one thing that he does very well and does very consistently is putt well on POA and NUA. You put him on the West Coast swing. This guy's making the cut at the very least. He's consistent on that part of the track. But this week, we do get that same type of surface. It's a track that rewards distance. Of course, around the green play has to be there. That's not his specialty, but he is at least right around a neutral player on tour. Just all comes down to the iron play. And realistically, if this guy was coming in with any semblance of form, he'd be closer to like 80, 85 to 1. And we get him at 250 to 1 at DraftKings. So that's probably one of my favorite plays on the board. Going to get an investment from me probably here in the next 5-10 minutes. Probably a tenth of a unit bet, right? So I'm just going to put $10 on him to win $2,500. That'd be pretty sweet. Moving down a little bit further, Hudson Swafford at 300 to 1. I've seen crazier things happen. Brendan Hagee at 321. Interesting, but not worth a bet. That's probably where I would end my card, right? That 300 to 1 with Hudson Swafford would be the last thing I'd even consider. And still not something that I'm likely to add to my card. Just I think that it at least has some intrigue to it. I mean, look at the difference between the 300 to 1 number, then 210 at FanDuel, 150 to 1 at BetMGM. Clearly there's a lot of value there at DraftKings. So if you're going to bet Hudson Swafford, make sure you're getting the 300 to 1 number on him right there. Could be worth at least a few looks. Let's go ahead and let me bring up the matchups, and then we'll talk at least a little bit of first round leaders as well. But let me bring up the matchup list here, and then I'll share my screen. All right, perfect. Let me go ahead and share this, and then we'll go ahead and catch up on chat as well. All right. Cool. So Chandler says, it won't let me message you, but if you could add me back, I would appreciate it. Sure, dude. I'll try to later on, but just it would be easier if you could message me, right? I'm in the middle of streaming right now, so I can't do that right now. Catch Me If You Can says I took Baddeley. What was his number out of curiosity? If you go ahead and throw that down there in chat, I'm assuming it's like 200, 250 to 1 or something like that. He Monday queued. He has good course history here. You could convince me to do a whole lot worse than that. I'm gonna have him in DraftKings, that's for sure. He's $6,000 this week, so definitely a lot of value to be had there, especially with his course history. I mean, the guy's made multiple cuts here. I believe has a top 10 at one point of his career. Let's talk about these matchups, though. So we're going to go matchup by matchup, see if there's any value that really stands out. You know, with that first matchup with those three scrubs, let's not focus on that. Let's look at some of the more intriguing groups like this Bryson DeChambeau, Gary Woodland, Luke List group. All three numbers are in the plus. I think Bryson at plus 160 makes a lot of sense. He's somebody who I think is a decent sleeper pick this week. On Wednesday last week, the first day of the match play, he looked pretty dreadful. He looked horrible, actually. I was kind of victory lapping my fate of him. But by Thursday and Friday, he started to look a lot better. So even a 85, 90% Bryson DeChambeau, I think has a good shot at beating Luke List and Gary Woodland there. So he'd be the guy I have my eye on there. If you're going to take a long shot, I think Luke List would be the guy you have to take a look at. I mean, he went out there, had a pretty solid showing at the match play. I don't think a lot of people expected him to take out Justin Thomas. He didn't end up getting out of his group, but all of his matches were competitive, and that was despite him not putting very well. Of course, the ball striking for Luke List is going to be what differentiates him from a lot of the field. And so if I was going to take a long shot, it would be Luke List, but I'm definitely signing towards Bryson there at plus 160. I think he wins it right around 45% of the time. And at plus 160, that's excellent value. Moving down a little bit further, let's focus on this Rory, Jason Day, and Matt Kuchar group. To me, the plus 100 on Rory McIlroy is unbettable. You know, anytime you have a three-leg group right here, a three-way, you can't do that type of line. I mean, plus 100 is just asking a whole lot. It'd have to be somebody like John Rahm matched up with JT Poston and Matt Kuchar for it to be that type of bet, right? This is much more consistent between these three players. I mean, Jason Day, like I said before, has some good upside here. Matt Kuchar at plus 280. Now that's hanging a pretty good number out there, Matt Kuchar. But the pick here would be Jason Day at plus 220. He's definitely got a much better shot than plus 220 to win this thing. And Matt Kuchar, even though he has had some success at this golf course, I believe he's won this event before, at least finished in the top 5. Actually, I believe it was a second place finish that Matt Kuchar had. That was in the past, right? This completely different player at this point. Matt Kuchar has not looked very solid for quite some time. Whereas Jason Day just 3 or 4 events ago was the darling of the DFS community. So plus 220, I like that number. There could be at least a little bit of value there. Moving down a little bit further, we have the Ryan. Let's take a look at this group here because we have a few books that we can choose from here. It's not all Bet365. Ryan Palmer, Ricky Fowler, and Ryan Brehm. So immediately, the guy that you just think is going to win the group is going to be Ryan Palmer, right? And he's at plus 151, and Ricky Fowler is at only 163. To me, that seems like Ryan Palmer would be a pretty decent bet. I mean, Ryan Brehm's not really somebody I'd be considering there. The putter is pretty atrocious for Ryan Brehm. Ryan Palmer hasn't been in the best form, but in terms of pedigree, just logic, just using my intuition here, I would definitely be on the Ryan Palmer side. Ricky Fowler, as much as it would be a feel-good story for him to win this week, just guys, I don't see it happening. We got to see some form first before we're betting on Ricky Fowler. I'll be betting against Ricky Fowler until we see that form. Moving on to the next group, this Matt Jones, Adam Longmore trainer group. I absolutely love Matt Jones there. I think he should be a favorite like he is, and I think that's well warranted there. A little bit further down the board, Martin Laird looks great at plus 163. He's a past champion at this event. He's played well over the last 3 to 4 events. In fact, he's top 15 in all my models for this week. So plus 163, that makes some sense. Johnny Vegas at plus 140 is just, I wish the number was like plus 165. I wish it would have had a little bit more value there, but you could convince me to take him out of that group. Troy Merritt and Matt Wallace aren't really doing it for me. Maverick McNealy as a plus 100 over Westwood and Kraft. See, that's a plus 100 I might consider taking, right? Because Kraft isn't really doing it for me. Lee Westwood looked pretty horrible at the match play, whereas McNealy looked absolutely fantastic. And I think McNealy's a much better course fit than both of these players. So if you were to take anybody at even money, for me, it would have to be Maverick McNealy in this specific group. I would like either Chad Raymie or Hudson Swafford in this group. I would not take Hideki Matsuyama. In terms of pure value, I would be all over Hudson Swafford here. In fact, in terms of matchup bets, this plus 275 on Hudson Swafford is my favorite of everything on the board. If I was going to put units on them, I'd probably put right around half a unit on most of those other matchups, probably 2 or even 2.5 units on Hudson Swafford. I think that number at plus 275 is just incorrect. Moving down a little bit further, we have a few featured groups we can talk about here. So Jordan Spieth, Corey Connors, and Charlie Hoffman. I think the play is Hoffman here, and it's not even close. Plus 266. This is the Charlie Hoffman Open. Charlie Hoffman Open, for goodness sakes. Answer Finau Snedeker. Ooh, see, Finau should realistically be higher. If we have Answer at plus 120, right? Finau should be like plus 170, plus 180 or something like that. So I think you're getting taxed a bit with this group. So I would most likely avoid the Answer Finau Snedeker group, even though I do think Finau or Answer ends up winning it. I just think that the value is not there. For this Lee Grace Champ group, Grace at plus 200 makes sense. Same thing with Cameron Champ. I wouldn't mind placing a bet on one of those two there. KH Lee, it's not like I hate the guy, but plus 150, given just the overall pedigree of all three of these players, I think all three of them should be like plus 175, right? So you're getting slight value on somebody like Brendan Grace. I think you're getting a little bit more value on somebody like a Cameron Champ. So you could definitely convince me to place that bet there. And the last matchup that we have on the board here, probably not somebody I'm going to bet on. Sam Ryder is very inconsistent, right? Unless you're looking for somebody to hole out like in DFS. Beau Hossler, if you're going to pick anybody from this group, it would be Beau Hossler at plus 225. He's got the putter we're looking for. He's very solid on Poa Nua. He's got the distance we're looking for at this venue. The approach play has been a lot better over the last month or so than what we've seen from him his entire career. So, yeah, Beau Hossler at plus 225. He actually convinced me to bet that. That's not that bad. Plus 125 on Keegan. I mean, I think he's the rightful favorite in the group, but plus 125 is just way too low of a number for us to consider betting. Let's go ahead and catch up on chat, and then we'll bring up the first round leaderboard. Battle Aid was 400 to 1. Wow, that's a even better number than I would have expected. Yeah, good call on that for sure. I might have to take a look at that myself after this, to be honest with you, because, again, I expected that number to be a lot lower than what you said. So should be a lot of value there. Let me go ahead and share my screen. We have the first round leaders on the board, and this is going to be the last segment that we do. So if there's anybody you want me to do a deep dive on, make sure to go ahead and put them down in the chat. I'll make sure to cover them in full detail. So we had the first round leaderboard up, and for me, first round leader is all about long shots. I don't consider taking guys up top. The numbers are just steamed a little bit higher than they should be. Where I really start my bets is in that 50 to 60 range, right? So a lot of my like second man in, bread and butter plays of the week, value plays of the week, those are the type of people that I'm trying to take for first round leader, and particularly people that are teeing off in the advantageous conditions. Now, for day one at this event specifically, there's not going to be that much wind on Thursday afternoon, and that's at least that was what I saw last night. Wind conditions can change, so of course, make sure to stop by the live stream tonight at 7 p.m. to get the most accurate picture of the wind for tomorrow. But in general, when we have no wind for the entire day, can pretty much take a first round leader from anywhere. So we're not going to be as fixated on AM versus PM for this time, but in general, when we do target first round leaders, we are going to try and target guys in the morning because usually it is a little bit more windy in the afternoon. A lot of people also talk about the greens. As more people walk on the greens, there tends to be more imperfections by the end of the day, a little bit more scuff marks, that kind of thing, which of course, in theory, can make players miss a little bit more often, but I think they're just full of it. The stats show that there's like a 0.05 shot difference in terms of the putting between the morning and the afternoon if the conditions are the exact same. So I think they might kind of be full of it, right? It might be a little bit of the placebo effect for why they think they putt better in the morning. But either way, let's go ahead and target some of these people. I think 60-1 for Johnny Vegas. This is somebody who gets out to a hot start more often than not. Would make a lot of sense. Luke List at 66-1, very similar type of player. Gets out to a hot start a lot of the time. A little bit further down the board, 80 for Brendan Steele. That's a very similar number for what we have in the outright market. You can convince me to play him for first round leader. A little bit further down the board, Beau Hossler at 100-1. Definitely also a first round leader type of bet that I'm looking at. Somebody that can get hot with that putter. Let's see, Matt Jones at 100-1. I wish it was closer to the 130 that we have for his outright number, but he's also somebody that has the skill set for a first round leader. Let's see. And now let's talk about a few long shots. So, Minwoo Lee, right? He's a very high pedigree player, just hasn't looked that good. At least at the match play, he won a match, was very competitive in 2 out of the 3. So perhaps he's starting to get back to his actual skill set. Cameron Champ at 125 to 1, right? That should be a lot higher. Right? He was 200 to 1 to actually win the golf tournament. Let's see. Garrett Higo at 130 to 1. You can convince me to bet that. Patrick Rogers at 130. I think that's fair. It is a little bit lower than what we had for the outright number, but still high upside play. Let's see. Swafford at 150. Again, that number is just taxed a little bit because it's for first round leader, but I don't hate it. And lastly, the last first round leader that I'd probably consider as just a pure long shot. Let's see if there even is anyone. There might not be, because a lot of these names they don't intrigue me. Yeah, they don't. So we'll go ahead and leave it at that. The last first round leader I'd consider would be Patrick Rogers at 130 to 1. But between those 7 to 8 guys, I may bet 2 to 3 of them. I'm not a huge first round leader guy. Usually I try and take, one guy in that 50 to 60 range, somebody in that like 70 to 80 range, and one complete long shot. If I had to just try and give you an idea what that would be right now, because I haven't bet any first round leaders, Johnny Vegas is most likely going to be my first round leader in that 60 to 70 range. In terms of this 80 to 90 range, at least a little bit longer, probably, even Martin Laird. I know I didn't mention him, but he's had so much success of late. He's had so much success at this golf course. 80 to 1 makes a little bit of sense. But Brendan Steele would likely be the guy that I add. And then for the pure long shot, Patrick Rogers at 130 to 1. I just have a weird feeling about Patrick Rogers this week. After burning a lot of people at Corrales, the alternate event, he was mega chalk last week. I think he might be out for a little bit of vengeance. So that's all we're going to have for this betting preview. It's the first time I've done this. So Chandler actually has a question down here, so we'll touch on it. I know he's been complete trash and probably isn't worth talking about, but in 150 lines, do you think you could play any Peter Uline? I do think you could, because he's only $6,100 or $6,000. He's one of those two numbers. I know he's at the bottom of the board. Definitely worth playing. So yeah, we'll talk about him during the live stream a little bit later when we're talking about DFS specifically, but he's a good ball striker. He's been around for a while. He's actually played this golf course numerous times to varying levels of success. He's missed the cut here before. He's also made the cut here before. So Chandler, I don't think he's complete trash. I don't think it's a completely useless question. I think he's probably somebody that I'll have in my player pool. So again, guys, the live stream tonight will be at 7 p.m. Eastern time. That'll be covering DFS for this week. We're going to do a deep dive on the weather, as it tends to get a little bit more accurate as we get closer to lock. We'll talk about ownership, any of your live questions. So make sure to stop on by for that, and I'll see you guys later.